What's up everybody, welcome to BalkanMoto. Today we continue with prepping the floor. Alright, so to prep the floor, what we're going to do is we're going to grind it first with a diamond cup grinder. That's in order to get rid of all the paint stains, any oil stains, or any other stains really on the concrete, but also to remove any imperfections so it's as smooth as possible. Once we finish grinding it, and we're going to grind the floor as well as these areas here to try to even things out as much as possible. So as you can see, I just broke off some of it, so this stuff should all come off. Once we smooth everything out, we're going to sweep it, clean it, and then we're going to focus on repairing some of these corrosion holes that are here. I'm also going to go over them with the grinder to expose them a little better. And I have some patch up cement that we're going to use to cover them in. So let's take a look at the tools that we have for today. Alright, so after contemplating whether or not I should just do some funny solution and grind the floor without any sort of dust control, I decided that I should have some dust control. So what we have here is essentially all the pieces that I ended up using. We have the grinder, we have the grinding disc, and here we have a dust shroud. Now, in my case, it turned out that this specific Milwaukee grinder, the 4.5-inch handheld small grinder, or what's the model number? They had it on here somewhere. The 6130-33 is actually the only grinder that Milwaukee doesn't make dust shrouds for. So I ended up buying one of these Herzo dust shrouds from Amazon, which also don't fit this grinder, but this was 50 bucks. The one that doesn't fit from Milwaukee is 170. And what I essentially did was I modified it so that it can fit, or fit in a good enough way. The way these things work is essentially they fit on the grinder like so, and the disc is mounted on the underside, so you have these bristles that kind of contain most of the dust. And then on this nozzle here, you end up plugging a shop vac to suck up most of the dust. Now the funny thing with these things is that they say they're pretty universal, but this outlet here, as you can see, it's taped. It came with this rubber adapter, which is far too narrow for the shop vac pipe. So as you can see, that just goes in freely on there. No sealant. So what I did was I took one of the pieces and stuck on one of these home vacuum tips on it that has a slight angle on it, taped it on there so dust doesn't escape, and as you'll see later, I just end up lodging it on, getting it stuck on the ends, so it creates a seal and I'm able to actually suck up the dust. So that's going to be the solution for there. In terms of how effective this is, well, there's only one way to show you this. Let me set up the grinder without the vacuum, and so you can see how much dust it ends up creating. And then I'll set it up again with the actual vacuum, and you can see that. So this is the grinder without any dust shrouding or dust protection. Just so you have an idea of how much dust is produced by these things. Okay, and this is what it's like with the vacuum and dust control. Okay, and this is what the floor is looking like once it's ground. I've also done the wall there up to, well, you can kind of see where it is. Unfortunately, my DIY solution makes it very difficult to contain the dust when I'm doing the wall. So that's a little unfortunate, but thankfully it goes pretty quick. As for the floor, grinding is pretty quick. When I do focus a little bit more on these kind of like stains here, or like the paint stains and stuff, it does give the grinder a little bit of a hard time. And actually after about pretty much doing that entire space, the grinder actually started to overheat, and a mysterious white smoke, which you can kind of still see, is coming out of it. So I'm gonna let it cool, and I guess I'll be doing this much at a time. So that's unfortunately the reality of doing it with tools that are not meant for this. You could rent a floor grinder from Home Depot that does this, but that also costs quite a bit more. Either way, that's the situation right now. Let's let this guy cool down. All right, after a incredibly messy and quite tough learning process, half of the garage is grinded down with the grinder. I've done the wall all the way around, as you can see. That should provide for a nice smooth surface, no bumps and paint or anything else like that on there for us to get this stuff on. Okay, progress is being made. That sixth of the garage is complete. You can kind of see where I ended up at the wall, and I've done it up to the crack. So what remains is these 2/6, or about a third of the garage, and then the rest of the wall there. Let's keep grinding. Okay, one more 1/6 done. Now just this remaining piece and the wall up to there. Almost there. And then we're gonna do a big cleanup. So first I'm gonna vacuum everything, and then I'm gonna hose it all down and then vacuum it again, and then let it dry overnight. All right, the grinding is finally done. Now to clean out the vacuum and re-vacuum this place. And then we're gonna wash the floor down, vacuum that up, and we're ready to start laying some concrete. So the grinder did survive, and actually turns out that it was only overheating because the way that I had attached the dust shroud was actually clamping onto the spinning components and essentially working against the motor, causing it to overheat. But it turns out that these things actually are fairly efficient at cooling themselves as long as they don't have too much resistance. So really what I did was I took out all those extra things that I had in there, and this was just literally sitting freely on there. Probably not the safest thing, but it did allow the grinder to work effectively, as well as the shroud to collect most of the dust. An added benefit of not putting anything in here and actually modifying this by cutting the clamp was that this was allowed to spin fairly freely around. So it allowed me to position the vacuum hose many different ways to make it very comfortable to work with. So in the end, it worked out for the better. Now this thing is all scuffed up and pretty damaged, but it did its job, which I'm quite happy with. For 50 bucks for something that didn't even fit, it worked out pretty well. So let's put the spring and the usual quick attach mechanism back onto this and put it away and start cleaning up here. All right, most of the dust is vacuumed off. I'm gonna move the tool bench out of here and let's hose this place down. And then we're gonna suck all that sludge and dirt up with the vacuum. All right, and the garage is vacuumed and swept per se. So pro tip here, if you're gonna be cleaning up concrete after you've just grinded it, it's actually not recommended to use a mop, because that will just end up smearing the sludge. You want to use a vacuum to actually vacuum it up after spraying it with water and washing it. So now the only thing that's left is wait for it to dry, and once dry we're gonna get some quick set concrete and fill in the expansion joints, which seem to be cut exactly for the purpose of things expanding and contracting. So we'll fill those in. I think they're, at this point, they've settled pretty well. We're also going to fix all these little corrosion holes everywhere. And once that's all dry, we're going to put the epoxy. Okay, it's the next day. Everything's dry. Let's fix up some of this concrete. So for the job, we have some Shotcrete Top and Bond self-bonding cement. We're just going to mix that with some water. We're going to use that mixer to get a nice uniform mixture. And then we're going to just use the spatula to fill in the cracks as well as the corrosion holes. So, all right, and the cement is on. Now to wait for it to dry. I covered as much as I could. Honestly, it doesn't need to be a perfect job because the epoxy I'm putting down is black and there's going to be speckle on it. It was more so to kind of correct the deep lines a little bit and some of those corrosion holes. All right, now that the concrete is all settled, let's scrape off all the little bumpy bits and vacuum this place one last time, and then we're going to start mixing the epoxy. All right, all scraped and cleaned and vacuumed. We're ready for epoxy. So this is the stuff we're going to need to do the job, or at least the first layer. So I got my epoxy from epoxytogo.com. They're a Quebec, Canada company that sells 100% solids, professional grade epoxy. What we have here is the 2 buckets of 3 liters each of resin and 2 bottles of hardener, each are 1.5 liters. So this, what you see here, is their what they call their double kit. So each of these bottles is supposed to combine into one of these buckets to make 4.5 liters of epoxy. These here are the colors. So I've gone with black. And they also sell vinyl chips, which I have these ones. I believe they're called, I don't know what their name is, but they're essentially gray, white, and black. And they also send you a full guide how to install it, how to clean, the safety behind all these things. So really a really good kit. What I've bought from them is essentially 2 double kits. One is this one that you see here with the black, and then another one like this without the colors, which we're going to do as a top coat. Refer to their website for how much you're going to need for your size garage, and do your math there. In terms of tools, we're going to need a bucket to start mixing some stuff, a drill with the mixing wand, a brush, a roller. I went with the microfiber rollers for 0 to no lint. A large squeegee to spread the epoxy more effectively, spiked shoes so you don't mess it up, and of course gloves and stirring sticks. These actually came with the kit, so definitely a very complete product there. So first let's mix in the color into the resin, and then we're going to move on with the hardener. Alright, so I poured the 2 resin buckets into a bigger bucket and added the 2 jars of color. So this is the type of color we're working with. It's a nice black, there you can see. So now I'm gonna pour back into these to the same amount. I marked them for 3.5 and 3.5, and then I'm gonna pour the hardener into one of them and mix it, and I'm gonna start putting it on so that when I do run out, then the other one I just add the hardener, mix it, and I'm not wasting time mixing colors and all that. So let's distribute them back and start mixing. Alright, and after a 1-hour battle with time, this is the final result. It's not perfect, but good enough. My tape started to peel off because it was shit. And I made some marks here and there. but you know what, I can live with that. It's a floor at the end of the day. The walls, because they're so tall, it took so long to put on the epoxy on there that it started drying off. That's why the flake didn't stick to it in certain places, but whatever, that's fine. Tossing the flakes evenly is also a pain in the ass, quite difficult to do, but that's fine. So we're gonna let this dry for 24 hours before deciding to step on it, and then we're gonna pour the clear coat on top, and that should give us a nice glossy look. I mean, right now we kind of have gloss, but not really, mostly because a lot of the flakes are not glossy, but once we get that in place, it should be nice. So let's let it dry for now. All right, we're back in the garage. It's been a little over 24 hours, and it's pretty solid. Should be okay to walk on. Yep, it is. Okay, so what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna sweep it to get rid of any loose flake. Clean those out of here, and then we're gonna mix in the clear epoxy and pour it on top. So, all right, so place is all swept up. I have the second set of resin buckets over there and over here. We're just gonna add the hardener to this. This is clear, no color whatsoever. Then I'm gonna mix it with the drill for 4 minutes, let it sit for 2 after that, and then I'm gonna start pouring it all over the place. Okay, and this is with all the epoxy on there. We're trying to rush so I can actually spread it out evenly. It's giving it this like nice shine everywhere. So I'm guessing when it dries, it's just gonna be exactly the same, except even smoother, as it like auto levels itself. Very happy with the result. I was able to kind of even out this line a little bit. I'll probably end up painting this portion here with some exterior concrete paint, just to kind of like match it up. But yeah, this is it. Now I have to wait for it to dry for 24 hours before stepping on it again, and then another 24 hours before loading everything else back inside. Okay, so it's been a little over 24 hours, and you can kind of see how shiny the surface is and how smooth. Feels pretty solid. Should be good for foot traffic, and it actually is. So the flakes did add quite a bit of grip to it, so it actually doesn't seem too slippery. I mean, we'll see how it is when there's actually water on it, but yeah, it's very very shiny. So I don't know if you guys can see that. It's so you have like bumps like this that are kind of nice to have, but then most of it is super smooth, and then areas that are kind of like not enough flake are actually super smooth. So when I talked to the company that I bought the epoxy from, they actually mentioned that it's probably a good idea to do one more coat on top as well. But I figured I'm gonna skip on that just because it's starting to get a little expensive, but also I actually like the grippy surface. Alright guys, that was it for the epoxy floor. Things are done. Next steps are bringing back the tool benches and ordering some new ones. Make sure you subscribe, hit the little bell for notifications when new videos become available. Check me out on Instagram at BalkanMoto 2018, and make sure to check out BalkanMoto.com. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.